Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to this next episode of Innovator Spotlight by Cyber Exchange. And today I'm really excited to have a great friend of Cyber Exchange, Abe Babler with Kerber Rose. Abe, welcome to today's program.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Well, a lot of people may not know who Kerber Rose is, but you guys have established yourselves primarily as an audit services firm, but a lot of people may not know you've got some really incredible technology services, which includes a real strength in cybersecurity. So we'd love a little bit more about Kerber Rose. Sort of tell us a bit more about the company.
Sure. Well, Kerber Rose is actually located in Wisconsin, but we're an expanding firm, including other states, and we serve clients all over the nation. And included in our service set is a full service accounting firm, and that expands into all kinds of areas and specialty services that we provide, which includes both technology services and cybersecurity auditing and assessments. And within that, we can provide consulting experiences for our clients to get them into a readiness mode to actually adopt a security framework that they haven't had before.
Well, as you kind of look at the market and you're speaking to customers of all sizes, every day, what are some of the trends that you're seeing that are really driving your services these days?
Well, a big part of it is twofold. One is that the risks that are automatically happening in the wild, we call it, okay, with all kinds of bad actors trying to gain financial or technical information that they can leverage for an exploit for financial gain, is creating all kinds of risks that organizations now have to consider controlling. And two, there's an automated process to a number of things that are happening on a regular basis with traditional services, even like accounting and audit. And when you combine those two things, you have to have a team that has the kind of technological experience and background to take a firm like ours to the next level. And that's what we have at Kerber Rose. And at the same time, we're able to take our clients, small, medium, and large, and help them meet the control objectives that they haven't met before in innovative ways that they haven't even thought of or seen, simply because of the base of experience we have across so many different clients in so many different industries.
Well, the title of our podcast today is Implementing Cybersecurity Frameworks. What are the frameworks that your team sort of covers, and kind of what are the ones that are kind of most popular that you're seeing these days?
Yeah, well, there's quite a few, but primarily with the AICPA, there's something that was referred to as SAS 70 a long time ago. And I don't want to get too far into the minutiae and bore the clients that are going to actually potentially watch this, but essentially it has evolved quite a bit. And it became what is called the SOC audit, or a service organization control audit, and that is specific to business relationships. And the significance of that is when you engage another business or vendor to perform certain tasks for your company, what kind of risks are they creating? And the SOC audit is a third-party audit for that particular organization to prove that, in fact, they have covered the risks that are necessary to control your data and your sensitive information in a manner that's consistent with your expectations as an organization. So those audits have become more and more prevalent over time, simply because of all the business-to-business relationships we see every day. For example, some of the larger platforms that you're using every single day on your computers, okay, have their own SOC audits that you can literally download from them on their website, because they're a humongous company that everybody's using, and they're just letting you know, here are the risks that we have covered inside our audit base, so that you know that the risks are under control. Focusing on those risks and making sure those risks are under control is exactly what organizations have to do to make sure that they can survive and thrive in a world that is trying to take advantage of them.
So you're seeing a lot of that sort of vendor management, third-party auditing driving a lot of this. What sort of threats are you seeing? I know you guys do some incident response work, consulting around that, but on the kind of the threat side of it, what are you seeing as sort of a trend these days along those lines?
Well, I think one of the largest things we saw was solar winds, and that actually ended up being rooted in somewhere in China, maybe from the Chinese government. But essentially what is happening is that you have, a long time ago, you had an organization that dissolved called the KGB. And they were essentially espionage agents that were out of work. And they created the first real cyber threats back then. Well, that has spread across the entire world as a revenue source, both for governments and parallel government organizations or independent crime syndicates. They are finding all kinds of resources or zero-day flaws in the design and build of hardware and software that they can exploit. And once they start doing that, they're utilizing those to leverage situations to their advantage, whether it's they're going to blackmail you and charge you a certain fee to restore your environment or give you the information that they stole back, or they're going to literally steal financial information from you and exploit that so they can take advantage of your bank accounts, your own staff, things along those lines. So when we get closer and closer to trying to deal with those realities, what you see inside all of these assessment tools or audits, okay, which includes the SOC audit that I discussed earlier, is their focus is more and more contingent upon whether or not you have cybersecurity risks under control. And in fact, the SOC audit is now 2/3 security.
Wow. It's really interesting. It seems that it goes back to a lot of employee training, doesn't it?
It really does. And there are specific aspects we can help you with in that realm as well. And there's other providers as well that you can look for. But there's a social engineering aspect to all this, which is, I could imitate you and convince your staff that you needed a certain purchase order or an invoice filled immediately, and try to utilize that to my advantage simply by imitating your domain address and your email so they can't see the difference. And then they fall through if you don't have the proper security in place because they assume it came from you and they're acting on your behalf. And that's one of the simplest ways that you see those exploits happen, but they happen quite a bit. And and I'll be honest with you, I've been doing this for a very long time, decade. And with that aspect, I've still failed a social engineering test from time to time. It does happen. Under panic,
Yeah.
with the wrong information, or them having the right information about the current state of your organization and taking advantage of that, suddenly you might think that's the real thing.
Yeah, the threat actors are getting a lot smarter for sure. A lot of our audience members don't have CISOs or large security teams. And, if you meet with an organization like that, how should they approach cybersecurity kind of from a reboot or let's say a cold start?
Yeah, and some of that actually starts with the cybersecurity frameworks we're going to discuss today. But there is a readiness process to introduce those frameworks to your organization as a starting point, where we can assist someone who isn't a CISO, that maybe is the IT director or manager, and they don't have the budget for a CISO, to actually start building a security framework in place with processes and procedures that they follow in order to make sure that they're tightening the security. And at the very minimum, those frameworks are comprehensive. They're going to expose things that you may not have been aware of. One of the things I tell many clients is that IT is very, very wide. Okay. There are certain aspects of it that I'm going to be better at, and certain aspects that I don't have as much exposure for. For example, software development is my early stages. I didn't spend a lot of time on networks, but I got more keen in that for audit purposes. But then when you get over into IT security, you may have an IT manager that doesn't have a background or experience in any of this. And it's a completely different type of engagement. It's a completely different type of business approach that you have to consider. And that's where we can help you with that. I mean, it's very important to think about how we can make sure that we're following a security process that is going to protect our business, protect our information, protect our employees, and protect our finances. And at the same time, can we put together a program, a process, a policy, a procedure, or a number of them that fit into a cybersecurity framework that is comprehensive, that has been developed by subject matter experts that know what they're doing with this. And with guidance from an organization like ours, you can reach those levels very easily. And there's some simple ways to start and some more complicated ways to start. And then there's a whole set of tools that maybe we can touch on later, that also fall into those areas. But the traditional thinking of we have an antivirus software package deployed on endpoints and we put firewalls up is not going to get it done. It's not enough to stop a bad actor who actually targets you from getting into your system.
Well, I look forward to learning more about your approach. So why don't we turn it over to you? I'm just going to stop sharing the Zoom here and let you pick up the screen.
Sure.
And just sort of tell us more about how you engage the marketplace.
So there's really a number of different areas that we like to touch on here. But as you can see under our Kerber Rose umbrella, we have a number of different cybersecurity frameworks that we offer both for assessment purposes and for consultative purposes to put in what we call the readiness stage. So you can start with this process and then we could actually assess it later to see where you're at. And these also follow a number of regulatory patterns, okay, regulatory requirements, whereby one organization has to follow regulations based on the industry that they're in. And so all of those fit into specific umbrellas that may serve your particular industry or your particular organization. And we can combine those efforts to meet your expectations or meet your needs. And the key aspects of that, and you can see, we put policy and business technology and social science as the fundamental tenets of the cybersecurity framework that we're going to put in. They go across all these frameworks, and there's some overlap in some of the things that they're doing. But ultimately, those frameworks are specific to your type of business and industry, and they're going to meet your expectations. And as we look at that, one of the simplest ones that's out there is the SANS Top 20 Critical Security Controls. And we have some details following some of these other areas down here that you can take a look at. And as we discuss some of this, The critical security controls is a fundamentally simple framework that covers a holistically wide base of all of your cybersecurity controls. And it's actually fairly easy to start implementing. But once we go through that process of the readiness and show you where your gaps are, you're going to see that changes need to be made so you can fill in gaps that you hadn't even considered before, because you may not have a background in cybersecurity. You may not be a CISO. You may not have been exposed to enough people with that type of experience simply because of the staff that you have. And you may not even have it in your budget to expand your cybersecurity budget threshold so that you can afford some of this. It's fairly affordable to start this process. And we've worked with a number of clients to do it. And in fact, I'm just wrapping one up this week. So then as we move forward and look at some of the other frameworks that we have, they're much wider and more holistic and specific. The cybersecurity framework that we see in front of us here is really looking at, the NIST CSF is the number one framework in use today. It is very deep. It is very holistic. There is a more thorough process to go through that if you do have a cybersecurity framework in place, but you want to fill in some gaps. We can certainly utilize that as well and get you up to speed on it. And then we move down to specialized areas, okay? And those specialized areas include HIPAA IT security, which also has a privacy aspect that we also offer, but it's not relevant to this conversation in that framework today. But the IT security for that was also developed by NIST, and it is a number of specific elements to it that are required, that they're basically saying, here's the framework that you have to follow, but here's a specific subset of controls that you actually have to have, where some of the other frameworks are a little more loose and can allow some flexibility in what your business model looks like. Why is that important? It's important because HIPAA is an actual law. It's obviously to protect health information. And if you're dealing with medical services, even if you're handling one of my clients, handling the advertising for a medical service, but you're doing it specifically for people who are healthcare patients, that's protected health information. So you have to follow a cybersecurity framework that adheres to that regulatory pattern and make sure that you're following what is necessary to adhere to the needs that you have to follow the law that's in place. ISO 27001 is very popular in a lot of ways. It's a standardized cybersecurity framework that's also available. Larger industries, especially when they're international, like to take a look at that. NIST 853 is actually for federal information systems and organizations that are affected by that. COBIT is a comprehensive model for cybersecurity. It's now COBIT 2019. There was a COBIT 5 prior to that. Obviously, we've adapted and we bring that to the table for our clients and interested prospects, where that comprehensive model can be adapted to your organization more readily because it has a number of different plug and play elements that are available for you. And then there's the SOC 2 audits, which we touched on briefly. Now, the separation there is this is not an assessment. This is actual an audit opinion. Okay, it comes from a CPA firm and it follows a process of how you actually perform an audit with specific rules of what must be performed in order to give an opinion on the audit. The interesting caveat to that is we use those same type of audit processes that are necessary to prove our opinion, our results of our assessments for all of those types of services we provide. And finally, one of the other things I touched on is penetration and vulnerability testing, which is really required in all these frameworks in one way, shape, or form. If you look at the specific details of the framework and you actually understand what they're saying you need to follow through and practice some of this. Questions on that?
Yeah. So when you engage a customer, is it like an assessment process starts first, and then sort of how does that assessment work? Let's say they want to pick one of these frameworks. Is that kind of how you get into that kind of data gathering and kind of create a baseline?
Sort of. There's a softer way to do it. An assessment or an audit is a comprehensive process of following specific rules of making sure we formulate a final opinion. But if they're just starting out and they haven't attacked any of this yet, and they have to address a number of areas and get a better idea of where they're at, we will perform a gap analysis. We will use the framework to sit down with them and see where they're at, see where the gaps are, make recommendations of the gaps, and then provide them with documentation that will help them do that, and then support them afterwards if they still need help in interpreting how they can move this forward. So there's a process of readiness moving into audit and assessment, and then the final paperwork or report that they can utilize for their client base or even regulatory agencies to say, here's where we're at and here's what we've done.
Now, I know you guys do some managed services work as well. So what if someone needs that kind of virtual CISO or an ongoing kind of maintenance and monitoring of their program?
Yeah, we do have co-managed services available, and we have complementary services available in a consulting capacity. And we also have a number of managed services environments that can be co-managed from an IT management level that's away from the CISO aspect. And then on top of that, we also offer a SIM, which is the next level, the next generation of security management, which is essentially, anytime there's a security event, there's an entire team watching your universe 24/7, 365, and that team is taking the place of a CISO, an entire security team, at the price of essentially one employee, that makes sure that you have an entire team protect your environment all the time. So if you're in a high profile government organization and you haven't taken the steps to shore up your security, that's a great opportunity to find a place in your budget for things like that. Or if you're in an organization that doesn't have the ability, a Fortune 500 company, to roll out an entire cybersecurity team to constantly monitor your environment, that's where the SIMs come into play, and they've emerged, for that purpose. So that's obviously a complementary service on top of the other technology services that we offer, but we're fairly comprehensive in what we provide. So it's a la carte. We help you with this process. We'll see some of the other things you need. If you want to come back to us to fill in some of those gaps with the services that we offer, we're more than happy to do that. And we also have a traditional MSP as well, managed service provider.
Well, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for the overview. Would you like to
Sure.
take a look at your listings in Cyber Exchange? I can pull that up. All righty. So one of the great things about Cyber Exchange is that we've got firms like Kerber Rose built in. I'm gonna go to that go to the website here. So what we've done
Sure.
is we pulled up the Kerber Rose kind of private marketplace. You can search for Kerber Rose or find them on the provider dropdown, and they'll also show up by frameworks. If I select certain frameworks, I need a consultant, it can filter that down. And here you see all the great places that Kerber Rose maps, across a lot of requirements, down through asset management requirements, border security, really full service. So if I click on your listing, it'll pull up more information. So here we kind of see a summary of kind of what you showed us already, which is great. So the framework-based capabilities. I can learn more about the way you deploy your services, what makes your firm unique, and I can contact you with one click, and I can also learn more just by clicking that button and connecting you with Abe and his team over at Kerber Rose. And this is really just a great way to research their capabilities and contact them just in one click. So I don't know, Abe, is there anything else you'd like to add color here to the listing?
Sure. Actually, that particular document that you have pulled up there, I might be able to share here shortly and go over that a little bit.
Okay. You want to go back to you, or I can just pull it up here?
Yeah. You can just pull it up. So essentially what we're doing with that is fairly unique for an offering that Kerber Rose has. About 8 years ago, I was involved in performing SOC audits, and I looked at the HIPAA security requirements for healthcare organizations that we serviced. And I said, we can roll this SOC audit on top of a HIPAA assessment and put the framework underneath a SOC 2 audit. And that gave us the ability to do something that very few firms at the time were doing a decade ago. And we provide that for a number of services, a number of different clients, so that they can cover both a SOC report and a HIP assessment at a more affordable rate and still meet their business to business relationship expectations, because that's really what a SOC 2 report is about. It's a service organization control report that is allowing your business to business relationship to see what risks you currently have. And from that, 10 years ago, when we started doing these kinds of things, you can see that we put other frameworks within the SOC 2 plus reports that can then comprehensively cover your regulatory requirements on top of your SOC report, meet all those objectives, keep your costs down for audit purposes, make it an annual event so that's taken care of. And then we've covered all the bases that you need to cover because of the regulatory requirements that you have. And if you're doing business with United Healthcare, they're going to look for a high trust report, which is mentioned here. Okay, and a high trust report is actually a HIPAA report combined with some other elements. And we can map that through into a SOC 2 plus HIPAA report and save you a tremendous amount of cost that a high trust is going to require in comparative nature to what a SOC 2 plus HIPAA costs. And we're not trying to be the least expensive from out there. We're actually just looking at what it takes for us to get this done, the number of hours, the way it's constructed, and the billing rate we have for that. And when we put the quote together, we come in under our competition almost all the time.
I just love the depth and breadth and the flexibility, based on that customer's business, and kind of putting together the frameworks that they need, and really doing sort of right-sized services work based on their size as well. So, well, that's fantastic. Well, we really love that deeper dive. And to everyone here watching, just go to Cyber Exchange and take a tour of Kerber Rose, and connect with Abe, and he'll be happy to have a conversation and see how he and his team can help. So,
Outstanding.
Abe, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed it. And for all of us watching the podcast, thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Abe.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.